The day is finally over, your body is exhausted, and all you want is a few hours of peaceful sleep. But the moment your head touches the pillow, your mind comes alive. It replays that awkward conversation from years ago, making you wonder why you said those words. It imagines problems that haven't happened yet, creating future disasters that exist only in your imagination. Then it quietly reminds you of every mistake you made today, every opportunity you missed, and every reason you might not be good enough. You tell yourself, just one more minute, then I'll stop thinking. But before that thought even fades, another one takes its place, and then another. What if the greatest source of your suffering isn't those painful thoughts themselves, but the habit of believing every single one that appears? It's a possibility most people never stop to consider. Instead, they spend years trying to silence their minds, hoping the noise will finally disappear. Others fight back by replacing every negative thought with a positive one. Yet despite all that effort, the same mental battles return again and again. Why? Perhaps the real problem has never been the thoughts. Perhaps it is the relationship you've unknowingly built with them. Throughout this journey, we'll explore a perspective that has quietly transformed countless lives. Not by teaching you how to control every thought, but by revealing something about the mind that is often overlooked. This isn't about forcing yourself to think positively, pretending painful thoughts don't exist, or chasing a perfectly silent mind. It's about understanding why certain thoughts keep returning, why they seem so convincing, and how true mental clarity begins the moment you stop treating every thought as the truth. To begin rebuilding mental clarity, we first have to question something most of us have believed our entire lives. Without even realizing it, we assume that every thought passing through our minds is telling us something true about who we are. When the mind says you're not good enough, we believe it. When it whispers, you're going to fail, we treat it like a warning. And when it repeats old regrets or painful memories, we assume those thoughts define us. But what if the voice inside your head is only one part of your experience, not your identity? Think about a common moment at work. You make a small mistake during a meeting. Maybe you forget an important detail, stumble over your words, or send an email with an error. The mistake lasts only a few seconds, but your mind refuses to let it go. Hours later, it keeps replaying the moment, saying, "Everyone thinks you're incompetent, you always mess things up, you'll never be successful." Notice something important. The mistake happened once. The suffering continues because the mind keeps telling the same story, and without noticing, you begin believing it. Buddhist wisdom offers a gentle but life-changing perspective. It teaches that there is a difference between thinking and awareness. Thoughts appear and disappear like clouds drifting across the sky. Awareness is the quiet space that notices those clouds without becoming them. You are not every thought that enters your mind, just as the sky is not changed by every cloud that passes through it. The mind can produce fear, anger, doubt, and self-criticism, but awareness simply observes them. The moment you learn to watch a thought instead of immediately believing it, something begins to shift. The thought may still appear, but it no longer has complete control over your emotions. This doesn't mean you will never have negative thoughts again. Every human mind produces them. The difference is that you no longer hand them the authority to define your worth or decide your future. You begin to see them for what they truly are, temporary mental events, not permanent truths. And once that realization takes root, an even deeper question naturally begins to emerge. If those thoughts aren't truly who you are, then where do they come from? Lesson 2. Why the mind keeps repeating the same pain. If the voice in your mind is not your true identity, then why does it keep returning to the same painful thoughts? Why does the mind replay certain memories over and over again, even when they only leave you feeling more exhausted? The answer is surprisingly simple. Your mind is not trying to make you suffer. In its own imperfect way, it is trying to protect you. The problem is that it often mistakes repetition for protection. Think about a painful regret that still visits you years later. Perhaps you replay a decision you wish you had never made. Or maybe you keep reliving the moment someone rejected you, wondering what you could have said differently. It could even be the stress of financial uncertainty, where your mind constantly calculates worst-case scenarios, believing that if it worries enough today, it can prevent tomorrow's problems. Every time these thoughts return, the mind quietly says, "Keep thinking, you'll eventually find the answer." But instead of finding peace, you become trapped in the same emotional loop. Modern psychology calls this rumination, the habit of repeatedly thinking about the same painful experiences without moving toward a solution. It creates the comforting illusion that you're preparing for the future or solving the past. Yet most of the time, nothing new is discovered. The same memories are replayed, the same fears are imagined, and the same conclusions are reached. The mind feels busy, but it isn't becoming clearer. It is simply becoming more familiar with its own suffering. Buddhist wisdom recognized this pattern long before modern psychology gave it a name. It teaches that suffering continues when we cling to painful experiences instead of allowing them to pass through awareness. Every time we grasp a regret, replay a betrayal, or hold tightly to a fearful prediction, we breathe new life into it. The event may belong to yesterday, but our attachment quietly carries it into today. In this way, the mind doesn't just remember pain, it keeps rebuilding it. The encouraging truth is that you don't have to erase every difficult memory to find peace. You only need to stop feeding the cycle that keeps those memories alive. When you understand that repetition is not protection, you begin to loosen its grip on your mind. But even this raises another important question. If repeating thoughts doesn't make them true, then why do some of them feel so convincing, as though they have the power to define our entire reality? Lesson 3. The hidden habit of believing every thought. As you begin to understand that the mind repeats painful thoughts because it believes it is protecting you, another, even deeper pattern starts to reveal itself. Repetition alone is not what gives a thought its power. A thought becomes powerful the moment you stop observing it and start believing it. This happens so quickly that most of us never notice the difference. We don't just experience a thought, we quietly accept it as the truth. Imagine making one mistake at work. Before the day is over, your mind whispers, "I'm a failure." Notice how quickly a single event becomes a permanent identity. Or perhaps someone walks past you without saying hello, and the mind immediately concludes, "They must be judging me." After a painful breakup, another voice appears, saying, "I'll never recover from this." None of these statements are proven facts. They are simply thoughts passing through the mind. Yet, because we rarely stop to question them, they begin shaping the way we see ourselves, other people, and the future. This is how thoughts quietly become emotional reality. If you believe you're a failure, you'll start noticing only the moments that seem to confirm it. If you believe people are constantly judging you, every glance or silence begins to feel like evidence. If you believe you'll never heal, each difficult day convinces you that nothing will ever change. The thought came first, but your attention slowly builds a world around it. Without realizing it, you stop living in reality and begin living inside the story your mind has created. Buddhist wisdom offers a liberating perspective. It reminds us that thoughts are not permanent truths. They are temporary mental events. They arise, remain for a moment, and then fade away, just like waves rising and falling on the surface of the ocean. You don't have to chase every wave, and you don't have to fear everyone that appears. The mind will continue producing thoughts just as the sky continues producing clouds. Your freedom begins when you recognize that you can witness those thoughts without giving each one permission to define your identity. This realization creates an incredible sense of space. You no longer feel obligated to argue with every fear, defend yourself against every doubt, or obey every negative prediction. But as soon as people discover they don't have to believe every thought, they often fall into a different trap. Instead of believing their thoughts, they begin fighting them. And surprisingly, that battle can become another source of suffering altogether. Lesson 4. Why fighting your mind makes it stronger. Once you realize that you don't have to believe every thought that enters your mind, your first instinct is often to get rid of the negative ones as quickly as possible. It seems logical. If certain thoughts make you anxious, guilty, or afraid, then pushing them away should bring peace. But have you ever noticed what usually happens? The harder you try not to think about something, the more persistent it becomes. The mind seems to cling even tighter to the very thoughts you are trying to escape. It feels frustrating, almost as if your own mind is working against you. Imagine holding a large beach ball underwater. At first, it stays beneath the surface because you're using all your strength to keep it there. But the moment your grip weakens, it bursts back up with even greater force. Negative thoughts often behave the same way. The more energy you spend trying to suppress them, the more pressure builds beneath the surface. Eventually, they return stronger than before, demanding even more of your attention. The problem isn't that you're having those thoughts. The problem is that you're locked in a constant struggle with them. This is why many people become exhausted. They aren't only carrying painful thoughts, they're carrying the weight of fighting those thoughts every single day. They tell themselves, I shouldn't feel anxious. I have to stop thinking about the past. Why can't I just move on? Without realizing it, they've created a second layer of suffering. First comes the difficult thought. Then comes the frustration of trying to force that thought to disappear. The battle itself becomes just as painful as the thought they were trying to avoid. Buddhist wisdom offers a gentler and far more effective approach. Instead of resisting every thought, it encourages us to acknowledge its presence without becoming trapped by it. Acceptance does not mean agreeing with the thought or believing it is true. It simply means recognizing this thought is here right now. The moment you stop wrestling with it, something begins to change, like a cloud drifting across the sky. The thought is finally given the space to move on. It may return later, but it no longer controls the entire landscape of your mind. Think about standing beside a flowing river. Every leaf floating on the water represents a thought. You could jump into the current and desperately try to stop every leaf from passing, or you could remain on the riverbank and simply watch them drift by. The river never asks you to hold on to every leaf, and your mind never asks you to believe every thought. It is only habit that convinces you otherwise. Real mental clarity doesn't come from winning a war against your mind. It comes from ending the war altogether. The less you struggle against every passing thought, the less power those thoughts hold over you. What once felt overwhelming slowly becomes something you can observe with calmness and compassion. But if fighting your thoughts is not the answer, then what should you actually practice to experience lasting peace and real mental clarity? Lesson 5. Creating space between you and your mind. If fighting your thoughts only gives them more strength, then what should you do instead? The answer is simple, yet deeply powerful. Instead of trying to control every thought that enters your mind, begin creating a little space between you and the thoughts themselves. That small space is where mental clarity begins. It is the difference between being carried away by every passing thought and quietly noticing it without immediately reacting. Most of us spend our days on autopilot. We drive to work while replaying yesterday's argument, We walk through the grocery store while worrying about tomorrow's problems. We stand in line checking our phones, comparing our lives to someone else's. Even while drinking a cup of coffee, our minds are already racing toward the next task or returning to an old regret. Our bodies are living in the present moment, but our attention is somewhere else completely. This constant habit of automatic thinking slowly fills the mind with noise, making it hard to recognize what is actually happening right now. Buddhist wisdom invites us to practice something much gentler. It is not asking us to empty the mind or force ourselves into a special state. It simply encourages us to notice. As you drive, notice your hands resting on the steering wheel. As you walk, feel your feet touching the ground. While waiting in line, observe your breathing instead of immediately reaching for another distraction. As you sip your morning coffee, pay attention to its warmth, its aroma, and the quiet moment you are already living. These ordinary experiences become chances to wake up from the endless stream of automatic thinking. This is mindfulness, not as a technique you practice for 10 minutes before returning to stress, but as a way of moving through your whole day. The more often you return your attention to the present moment, the more you strengthen awareness instead of habit. Gradually, you begin noticing your thoughts the moment they appear. Instead of instantly following them wherever they lead, you pause. In that brief pause, you regain something incredibly valuable: the freedom to choose your response. Over time, this quiet practice changes the relationship you have with your own mind. Thoughts may still come and go, but they no longer pull you in every direction. There is more calm between one thought and the next, more clarity before every reaction, and more peace in moments that once felt overwhelming. You begin to realize that awareness is like a steady light. No matter how noisy the mind becomes, that light remains present, patiently waiting for you to return to it. And as that awareness grows stronger, something unexpected begins to happen. It does not only change the way you respond to your thoughts, it slowly changes the kind of thoughts you choose to nourish in the first place. Lesson 6. Feeding the mind that brings peace. As awareness becomes stronger, something else begins to change, often without you even realizing it. You start becoming more careful about what you allow into your mind. This matters because the mind is constantly being shaped by whatever it repeatedly pays attention to. In many ways, your attention is like water. Wherever it flows, something begins to grow. If it keeps flowing toward fear, comparison, anger, and endless distraction, those habits become stronger. But if it flows toward peace, gratitude, wisdom, and presence, the mind slowly begins to reflect those qualities instead. Think about how many voices compete for your attention every single day. You wake up and immediately scroll through alarming news headlines. A few minutes later, social media convinces you that everyone else is happier, more successful, or further ahead than you. Throughout the day, your mind compares your life with carefully edited versions of someone else's reality. By evening, you have carried hundreds of opinions, worries, and expectations that were never truly yours. Then you wonder why your mind feels restless. The answer is not always hidden in some deep emotional wound. Sometimes it is hidden in what you have been feeding your mind from the moment you opened your eyes. Now imagine a different rhythm. You begin the morning with a few quiet moments instead of endless scrolling. During the day, you choose conversations that leave you feeling understood instead of drained. You take a short walk without filling every second with noise. You pause to appreciate a simple meal, a kind word from a friend, or the beauty of an ordinary sunset. None of these moments may seem extraordinary on their own, yet together they quietly reshape the landscape of your mind. Peace is rarely built through one dramatic experience. More often, it grows through the small things we repeatedly choose to notice. This reflects a timeless Buddhist insight. The mind gradually becomes whatever it consistently cultivates. Every thought you encourage, every emotion you repeatedly return to, and every habit you strengthen becomes part of the environment where your inner life grows. This does not mean you should avoid difficult news, ignore painful emotions, or pretend life's challenges do not exist. It simply means recognizing that whatever receives your attention also receives your energy. And over time, your energy determines the direction your mind naturally follows. When you begin feeding your mind with greater awareness instead of constant fear, comparison, and distraction, mental clarity no longer feels like something you have to chase. It begins to become your natural state. You realize that peace is not only found in rare moments of meditation. It is quietly built through the countless choices you make every single day. And eventually, all of these discoveries lead toward one final realization, a realization that changes the way you see your mind, your thoughts, and your freedom forever. Lesson 7. The day you stop arguing with every thought. After everything we have explored together, one truth quietly begins to stand above all the others. Mental clarity was never waiting for the day your mind became perfectly silent. It was waiting for the day you stopped believing that every thought deserved your attention. For so long, you have treated every fearful prediction, every painful memory, and every harsh opinion your mind creates as if it were a message that had to be answered. But not every thought is asking for your response. Many of them are simply passing through, waiting to see whether you will hold on to them or let them continue on their way. Think about how much of your life has been shaped by arguments that existed only inside your own mind. You argued with old regrets that could no longer be changed. You argued with imagined futures that never arrived. You argued with opinions that other people may never have even had. Every argument demanded your energy, your attention, and your peace. Without realizing it, your greatest struggle was never against the world around you. It was against the endless stream of thoughts moving through your own mind. The deepest lesson in Buddhist wisdom is not that difficult thoughts will disappear forever. They will not. Every human mind produces moments of fear, doubt, sadness, anger, and uncertainty. Even the calmest person still experiences thoughts they did not choose. The difference is not in the number of thoughts that appear. The difference is in the relationship they have with those thoughts. They no longer see every passing thought as an order that must be obeyed or a truth that must be believed. Imagine sitting beside a quiet road. Cars continue passing in both directions. Some are loud, some are peaceful, some move quickly, and others slow down for a moment before continuing their journey. You do not feel the need to chase every car that passes by. And you do not become upset because another one appears. You simply watch them come and go. Your thoughts can be experienced in exactly the same way. They will continue to arrive, but you no longer have to climb into every one of them and allow it to decide where your day will go. This is what real mental freedom feels like. It is not dramatic. It is not a sudden moment where every problem disappears and every negative thought is erased. It is much quieter than that. One day, you notice that a familiar worry appears, and instead of immediately believing it, you simply smile, take a slow breath, and let it pass. A painful memory returns, but it no longer steals your entire afternoon. Self-doubt knocks at the door, but you no longer invite it inside to make itself at home. The thoughts are still there, but they no longer control your emotions, your decisions, or your sense of who you are. You can still dream about the future without becoming consumed by it. You can still learn from the past without living inside it. You can still experience difficult emotions without allowing them to define your identity. That is the quiet freedom this journey has been leading toward all along. Mental clarity is not an empty mind. It is a mind that is no longer ruled by every passing thought. At the beginning of this journey, you were lying awake after a long day. Your body was exhausted, but your mind refused to rest. It replayed old conversations, imagined uncertain futures, and filled the silence with an endless stream of inner dialogue. It felt as though there was no escape from your own thoughts. Those thoughts may still visit you from time to time. Some mornings they will arrive without invitation. Some nights they may quietly return. But now you know something you did not know before. You do not have to believe every thought that enters your mind. You do not have to fight every fear, replay every memory, or answer every doubt. You can simply notice them and let them continue on their way. Perhaps that is where true mental clarity begins, not when the mind finally becomes silent, but when you stop allowing every passing thought to speak for who you are.